Welcome to Coding in the Cinema. Today I'm discussing 3 British films from the Criterion Collection. These all 3 are in black and white that are really good movies that I think you should see. If you haven't, add to your collection possibly. And I actually don't own a physical copy of any of these 3, so you'll have to let me know in the comments if you do, because I need to get a copy of each of these, starting with The Sporting Life from 1963. And this, in the Criterion Collection on the channel, if you watch it, is described as one of the best British films ever made. It stars Richard Harris as a rugby player. And if you have not heard of Richard Harris, or if that sounds familiar, but you don't really know, where have I seen that guy from? He was the English Bob character in this great film, Unforgiven. So Western fans, this might be a good British drama for you if you haven't ever tried it out. But he's basically, he's trying to break into this sport. He's trying to make deals to become a paid player. And he lives with this widow. They're not, like, at first, they're not kind of involved, but he just lives there in this lodge. He's like renting this space. And she has these kids left behind, and she's really traumatized by the death of her husband, which we find more out about later. This is an incredibly bleak, dire, but beautiful film. There's this energy that's pent up inside of Richard Harris as this really kind of tough as nails. He almost is like a Tom Hardy type, if you think about a more modern actor. And he's constantly like chewing, and that's really important to the film, that he's just this energy that just can't seem to escape in a proper way. At one point, when he does actually get to show off some of his more cultured personality, he's singing in this bar, and even the way he sings, it just sounds like it's from deep inside of his soul and from the earth, and it's not particularly pleasant, but it's not particularly unpleasant. And everything about that part of the film and how it uses sight and sound and everything really builds the character, and it builds a situation, and I think this is a 5-star film as a result of that. Additionally, and the actress Rachel Roberts, the widow, she really matches that intensity of Richard Harris. And sometimes it's very quiet, their interactions, but it can get quite loud, and it can get quite in your face. There's a really effective image where she's, constantly trying to polish or clean her deceased husband's shoes, and that really stands out. And so much of the good cinematography in the film, just shot right in the dirt and the mud of the rugby field. There's nothing particularly glorious or glamorous about it. In fact, some of you who like Raging Bull in the way that, Scorsese shot those different fights in the ring and so forth, you might find some of that kind of feeling here. And it's just in general a real good clash of like the raw versus the sophisticated. And moreover, for those of you who think, well, I'm never going to be a rugby player who's down and out on his luck, this is kind of a lot about role playing and the roles we play in life that we're maybe not equipped for, where we improvise, and whether that's Richard Harris trying to be a very makeshift stand-in dad, or whether that's, Rachel's character trying to make do with what she can with this incredibly complex situation. It's a real heartbreaking, tender story with a great ending and great individual images in the film all over the place. And I really encourage you to see this Sporting Life from 1963 if you haven't. And I really love the film, and I can't wait to get a copy. The second of these is a film I'd watched a while ago, and I went back and revisited it in parts, and I love the train sequences in this beautiful movie. This is David Lean, who directed this thing, Lawrence of Arabia. I've got this old copy here that's kind of sought after. But he directed this film called Brief Encounter, and there's a chance meeting in Brief Encounter where this doctor he finds this housewife who's near the station, and she has something in her eye, and he offers to help because he's a physician. And they end up developing this relationship and this chemistry despite the fact they're both married. And she is particularly resistant to that because her husband, by all means, is doing everything well. I mean, he's a nice guy. He's a good support at home, it seems like. And it's just one of those things that kind of happens. The description said that it is based on Noel Coward's play Still Life, and it deftly explores the thrill, pain, and tenderness of an illicit romance. And there's a line in here I wrote down where one of the characters says, I didn't think such things could happen to ordinary people, and it is ordinary. It's an ordinary but impossible situation, and these are just normal people living their lives. And when this chemistry and this attraction comes with these two people, it's very believable. And it's another sad kind of movie. The train in this film is very menacing almost. If you think about High Noon, when the train that's going to bring the bad guy back, right? Frank Miller, I think his name is, to face the sheriff there in that picture. I mean, it's similar. It's just even darker and more brooding, and even like the station where you see this kind of, I don't want to call them a couple, sort of like these two older people who like flirt with each other in the station. Even that whole station is kind of cramped, and it just feels like there's just no real escape for the situation and the desperation the characters find themselves in. And David Lean used a really clever, I think, narrative structure, because we see some of the elements sort of taken out of order, and you don't necessarily know that how that's being constructed until later, and it really does have a good payoff. We think about films like Pulp Fiction that sort of play with narrative order to success, and this is very similar to that, maybe not as much as that film. And I just really, really liked it. So, great film you should see from David Lean. If you've heard of that director and you've watched Lawrence of Arabia and you want to give one of his black and white films a try, I would really recommend that one. And finally, for those of you that are a fan of this film, at least on a technical level, if nothing else, Titanic. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to play Titanic all the time in our downstairs. Like, everything was drowning and I had to escape, because this is one of the first truly cinematic, pretty films I ever saw. And a really important film to me. I saw it on VHS, but I've got my 4K here. If you like Titanic, which a lot of movie folks do, despite maybe you don't love the acting or the performances sometimes, or you don't love the love story, there is a more serious film. For better or worse. I mean, it complements the Titanic well. And this film is called A Night to Remember, directed by, was it Roy Baker, I think? And it does tell that story. It's based on Walter Lord's book of the same name. And I've read most of that book. It's a really compelling read as well. You should check that out. I think maybe I only haven't read a chapter or two. But it really does do a good job of showing you how this goes from 0 to 100. And the tragedy that happened with the Titanic. Even just the whole time in that film, there's always a sense of dread, and I think the black and white really helps with that. It's superbly shot, especially in the beginning, like when it could have been less visually compelling, and it isn't, with those sweaty boiler rooms and like these great dining areas that are they just look so magnificent. And then there's the dancing that's kind of similar to what happened with Jack and Rose and Titanic. That's really neat stuff. I love the iceberg sequence in this. I like it actually a lot better than how the Titanic handled it. And then when I was watching the ship approach the iceberg with this kind of calm mechanical stillness, it almost, I've been looking at Halloween, the Mike Myers Halloween, John Carpenter Halloween, and the way that character is like this just like mechanical, straightforward threat that's almost not even organic. It's just walking at you like a Terminator. That reminded me of how this iceberg really just approaches the ship. It's like the ship isn't approaching the iceberg is approaching the ship from a visual standpoint. It can't be stopped. There's nothing you can do about it, and everyone's just going to try to improvise. And I love that part of it and how that's built up. And after the crash, there's simple things like you'll see a dinner tray will shake a little bit or like move a little bit on its own, almost in a paranormal looking way. And then as things progress, all of a sudden you really see people freak out and do a lot of the similar stuff they did in the other Titanic. And you get these great shots of like, below in the water, and you're looking up, you can kind of see the people, a captain or a crewman above, and then you're down below. There's just a lot of good use of that. The water busting through, all of that is really pristinely shot and awesome. And I don't think it has quite the like mainstream narrative appeal that the Titanic did, and that's probably part of why it was kind of to some mixed success. But over time, it's become what I think of as another great Titanic movie. And I think, like I said, the strengths and weaknesses of both films would balance each other out for a good double feature. So if you like Titanic, you do want to watch A Night to Remember and see how you feel about it. But those are just 3 British films that I've been looking into lately. I would love to hear your recommendations from the Criterion Collection. Please leave those in the comments for me. Always like interacting with you all in that way, and click the thumbs up like button for me, and then subscribe if you haven't to Cody in the Cinema.